God. First of all, thank you all very much for kindly inviting me tonight. I'm going to speak a few words. Try to speak some this great process and this great movement of consciousness. By the grace of divine grace, of Swami, we're all sitting here tonight, fortunate among the residents of Chennai. So many other things that people have chosen to do, but we're hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam. And particularly this is the translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, Bhagavat, founder and author of the So, topic of tonight's discussion, we have set as the power of Satsanga. Power of Satsanga. There is a book that's dated in Europe and French Bhasha book called Bhaktamal. And in that book, there's a commentary written by one of the Radharaman Goswami, long back. His name was Priyadas. This is the 17th century book. But I'm quoting from that book because it's a very astute observation that he made therein about Satsanga. He says, the tree of faith was just a little sapling that might be eaten up by a single goat, little baby goat. It was given the fence of discrimination and sprinkled the water with the water of Satsanga. And it began to grow. Very branches and twigs and leaves it put forth on all sides. It climbed into the sky, and its glory spread all over the earth. And because it was drawing its nourishment from the roots of those who are holy, pious persons. Glorious and widespread became its shade. All things that live found cooling shade beneath this tree, and they drew fresh life from it. And we should mark well how this tree has come to grow like this. Once it was a feeble thing, for whose sake we were afraid of a baby goat, and now, shackled to that mighty tree, are many great war elephants. This is his appreciation. You understand the metaphor here? This is poetic. He's saying, Krishna consciousness is like a tree. In the beginning, you have to fence it off to keep goats from eating it. It will be destroyed by a single goat. But if you constantly water it with hearing and chanting, and particularly through Bhakta Sangha, Satsanga, Vaishnava Sangha, then gradually it will grow very strong enough that you can tie mighty war elephants to that tree, and they'll not go anywhere. That strength is there. So I thought that would be a nice way to open this class. Tonight we've chosen to speak from third canto, teachings of Lord Kapila Dev to his mother Devavati. Very famous verse, third canto, chapter 25, text number 25. Raise your hand if you know this verse, 3:25. I'll give you a hint. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido ityadi. Yes. Okay, so we know this. All right, so as always, we begin with Mangalacharana. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namaskritya Chaiva Narottamam Devi Saraswati Vyasam Jayamudiraye Ayeshwa Bhadreshu नित्यं भागवत सेवया अत्युत्तम श्लोके भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णे स्वधामो भगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह नष्टदृशाम् एष नानार्को धुनोदितः ततां प्रसंगान् मम वीर्य संविदो भवन्ति हृत्कर्णरसायना कथा जोषणादाश्ववर्गवर्धने तद्भारतिर्भक्तिरनुक्रमिष्यति. For the interest of saving time, I'm just going to read the translation. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he's free, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Purport by His Divine Grace the Prabhupada. The process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described here. The first point is that one must seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. Without such association, one cannot make advancement. Simply by theoretical knowledge or study, one cannot make any appreciable advancement. One must give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of devotees. Because without the association of devotees, one cannot understand the activities of the Lord. Generally, people are convinced of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Because they do not associate with devotees, they cannot understand that the absolute truth can be a person and have personal activities. This is a very difficult subject matter. And unless one has personal understanding of the absolute truth, there is no meaning to devotion. Service or devotion cannot be offered to anything impersonal. Service must be offered to a person. Non-devotees cannot appreciate Krishna consciousness by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature wherein the activities of the Lord are described. They think that these activities are fictional, manufactured stories, because spiritual life is not explained to them in the proper mood. To understand the personal activities of the Lord, one has to seek the association of devotees. And by such association, when one contemplates and tries to understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, the path to liberation is open, and he's free. One who has firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes fixed, and his attraction for the association with the Lord and the devotees increases. Association with devotees means association with the Lord. The devotee who makes this association develops the consciousness for rendering service to the Lord, and then, being situated in a transcendental position of devotional service, he gradually becomes perfect. Om Jnana Timanantasya Jnanam Chinashalakaya Chakshurvalitam Kiratasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Malokishtam Savikam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamahyam Tada Vishwapada. Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sacha Shri Guru Sadhiratam Samadhanam Jiva Sadhaitam Sadhadutam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Sri Radha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Srivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mad Gadira Vigopada Sri Purya Kripaya Yadi Tadaiva Samkaya Pitva Krishyayustat Vyasnaha. I'm trying to follow in the footsteps of Srila Sanatana Goswami. He prays at the end of his 10th canto commentary, my dear Lord, Gopal, only if you accept my words to be like your cows, then I can produce enough milk to satisfy your beloved devotees. Let's all turn off our cell phones, please, if you haven't done that already. So, please show of hands, how many people actually know this verse by heart? Please raise your hand if you memorize this verse. Okay, some. But we're going to look at it in quite some depth. So it's good to know the words. Or you have the words in front of you if you don't know it. Sridhar Swami, in his commentary, Sridhar Swami is the oldest commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. And he writes here, Sangatya bhakti angatam upapadiyati. In this verse, the speaker is Kapila Dev is establishing the importance of association with devotees as one of the principal angas of bhakti. Viryasya samyak vedanam yasu ta virya samvidaha. So we have this word virya samvida. And it's explained in various ways by our charges, which we will comment on. But it basically means very powerful. These topics become very potent when they are discussed among those who have complete perception of the Lord and His power. In other words, when we hear this katha from advanced devotees, especially pure devotees, then the topics themselves become as if more powerful than they were previously. Human reason fails to understand how this can be so. But by serving a pure devotee and by associating with such a devotee, just hearing the things that you may have heard already from someone else or from the book alone, it takes on a life of its own, as it were. This is the meaning of virya something. So that's one thing. And then satam prasangat. How does it happen? It happens from prakrishta sangha. Prakrishta means special association, or the association of those who are really special devotees. Not just ordinary devotees, advanced devotees. So prasangat, everyone is saying here that it means in the association of these very advanced devotees, then you get this powerful Krishna katha, which has a different effect on your consciousness. Let's go on. But what happens? Bhavanti hrit karna rasayana. What does hrit karna rasayana mean? It's medicinal. Just like you go to the Ayurvedic Vaidya and he gives you some sort of rasayana. This is a rasayana. Sridhar Swami says, why is it rasayana? Because sukhada. It makes you happy. Just like when you go to buy your Dabur Chavan Prash, it's going to be sweet. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to sell it. So by eating it, you enjoy pratyakshavam avagamam dharnyam susukham kartam. He's kind of hinting at this. That's how I read it, at least. Krit karma rasayanaha sukhada. It gives you happiness. And Tasam Joshanat Sevanat. That Joshanat Ashwapavartani means it's very quickly placing you on the path of liberation. We'll get to that in a moment, but what does Joshanat mean according to Sridhar Swami? He says it means Sevanat, by rendering service. It's not enough just to associate with devotees, although that's very pleasing also, and very joyful experience to have the association of a pure devotee. But to serve that devotee, that's what is really meant here by Tasam Joshanat, Tat Joshanat. Or to serve amongst such persons is another way you can say. Cultivation is how Prabhupada translates it in his word-for-word synonyms. But that cultivation means rendering service. And then, as we said, you're very quickly placed on the path to Lord Hari, which is the path of liberation. Avidya nivrittir vartma. That's how Sridhar Swami glosses it. The apavarga vartana, the path beyond pavarga, or beyond this mundane existence, is the path which destroys all of your illusions, dissolves all of your illusions, takes them all away. We come at entry-level devotional servants. We have so many misconceptions when we read, even when we read Srila Prabhupada's books. I have personal experience of this, actually. I had Srila Prabhupada's books for quite some time when I was just a kid, because I grew up near the temple in Los Angeles. And gradually I started reading those books, but because I was associated with other spiritual groups, Mayavad, they're all of the nature of Mayavad. So I kind of was reading the wrong thing into it. For example, when Lord Chaitanya says, please place me as an acham at your lotus feet, I thought, yeah, I'm going to merge into the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. I actually had that misconception until I started to associate with devotees. Then they said, well, it's not exactly like that. So this is the thing. Avidya nivritti means in that association, hearing potent Krishna Katha, you get a taste, you're enlivened by that taste if you've rendered service, and that taste will place you very quickly on the path of liberation by destroying all of your illusions. Because all the other things the other options or alternatives to Krishna consciousness, they become much less significant. Priorities change. Your attachments change. The infatuation that you have with this material energy, it diminishes. And that always happens if you're following this process correctly in the ways that we're explaining here. So then he breaks it down into different, let's... Shabda He. So, first of all, apavarga. Does everyone understand what this means? Apavarga. You don't have this in Tamil. You only have pa, as I understand. At least in Sanskrit and Indo-Aryan languages, we have pa, pa, ba, pa, ma. And they stand for something. Pa stands for? Parishram. That's all you get in Tamil Nadu. Parishram. Pa, how hard are you working? When we used to come to Mathura in the old days, there was no taxi, no nothing, not even ambassadors in those days. You get a tanga. I don't know how you say tanga in Tamil. It's a cart. It's a horse drawing the cart. And you got to load on that thing. And halfway to Vrindavan from Mathura, the horses are foaming at the mouth. They have to stop and give them water to drink. Otherwise, they're going to give out. So this is how hard we work, isn't it? 40 hours a week. Does anybody work 40 hours a week anymore? No. Maybe some IT professionals. Since IT stands for India Tripti. So, Tena, we're working so hard that we're like animals foaming at the mouth. Murha is another way. How do we say? Mutal ara. So, then, what happens after Tena? I've lost my screen here. No, not Bhaya. What comes before Bhaya? Bantha. What do you get in lieu of a paycheck? You get a karmic reaction. That's called banta, karma bandhana. That's what you get for all your back-breaking hard work that makes you foam at the mouth. Then you got to pay for it later, in addition. Therefore, bhaya, as you approach death, you become increasingly afraid. If you don't believe me, just wait. You'll get there. We all do. So, bhaya. And then finally, the last crowning glory of the whole process. I don't know. You die. Shankaracharya tells us so many times. So, ma. This is the situation in this material world. We have to undergo these things. But somebody who is associated properly with devotees and who has developed a taste and is relishing Krishna consciousness, that person is very quickly placed on the path to Lord Hari, which takes you out of this by destroying all of your illusions first. So, 21st century Datta is supposed to help you, but it doesn't. It's like cell phones. Cell phone, it does all these neat things for you in the beginning, and then it starts taking over your life and making decisions without your permission. And have you noticed? I mean, this is my experience. Okay, so there's a process in which this happens. How are you pulled out of this avidya, and how are you placed on the path of deathlessness, going towards Krishna in the end? Shashvatam padamapyayam prathamam shraddha tato ratis tato bhaktir. First there's faith, then there's taste, then there's bhakti. This is Sridhar Swami's opinion. And then he says, Anukrameshyati, kramena bhavishyati arthaha. Anukrameshyati means there's going to be an order of operations, as you know. If you have, 4 equals x plus 1, what do you have to do first? Whatever's in the parentheses has to be solved first. Engineers know this. So there's an order of operations to bhakti, to kramena bhavishyati iti artha. This is Sridhar Swami. That's all he says. It's a little cryptic for us still. Fortunately, we have Sanatana Goswami before that. He gives us a more in-depth commentary. Viryasya sambhav vedanam yasutta virya samvida. That's the same thing we've already heard. This is from his Hari Bhakti Vilas 10th book, by the way. Adaiva hrit karna rasayanas sukhada tasam joshanat sevanat avavargo avidyani vritir mokshova. The only thing he's adding to what we've already described here is that this avidya nivriti path is also called moksha, path of liberation. So, Ratishcha Rati Akhyo Bhava. The Acharyas commenting on this verse, they have slightly different ways of looking at these terms. So here's the first example. According to Sanatana Goswami, we have the line, what is the last line of the verse? Somebody who knows it can tell me. Shraddha Anukrameshyati. Shraddha Rati Bhakti. That's why Sridhar Swami is only talking about these 3, because they're the only 3 that are mentioned explicitly. Later on, when we get to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we will see Rupa Goswami expands this into subdivisions, 8 or 9 steps. And in fact, in his commentary on the first canto, chapter 2, I believe it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur who takes Rupa Goswami's list of 8 items and expands them into 14 items. So it's, depending on how you look at it, different acharyas have different ways of explaining. But according to Sanatana Goswami, the Rati that's mentioned here means Bhava Bhakti. So Shraddha, if you've got Pakka Shraddha, then you will get Bhava, and then you will proceed on to Prema. Bhaktishcha Prema Lakshana. This is his point. The characteristic of what we're calling bhakti here in this verse, that is actually prema. Now, what is the definition of prema? Prema is a word we have everywhere. Everybody says prem, but what does it actually mean? It's a very interesting thing. There are different definitions, of course, there always are, because we're all people. People have feelings. People have desires. People have different viewpoints. We're individuals. It's personal, in other words, as Prabhupada says in his purport here. Sanatana Goswami, in his Brihad Bhagavatam, says that prema is nothing other than absolute and unconditional what? No. No. Humility. Think about that. If you get absolute and unconditional humility, you are in love of Godhead. Now we understand why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this. Srinadapi Sunichena Ityadi. And why Krishnadas Kavidas Goswami says, take this verse and wrap it around your neck and do not forget it. Because all you have to do actually is become absolutely and unconditionally humble. And you will be in love of Godhead, because that's what it means, according to Sanatana Goswami. So here, Bhaktishcha Prema Lakshana, the characteristic of this prema is devotion, or vice versa. Etad vivaranam cha Shri Mahanubhavayadeva Rasarnave Kratamasyeva. This is a good point he makes in the end. The point that we should take home from this is that this whole description describes that a person is placed into the ocean of rasa. Ocean of rasa. Does that sound familiar? What have we heard? Bhakti rasa amrita sindhu. Rupa Goswami says, yes, it is an ocean. Not exactly the rasa is an ocean, but the rasamrita, the nectar of that love, or that exchange, the reciprocal love of Godhead, that is an ocean of nectar. And he also takes the metaphor further and says we should be like deep water fish. Srila Prabhupada said this also. Deep water fish. Here in Chennai, you must have stood on the ocean and seen what happens to the little fishies who get curious and come up to the top where the water is nice and salubrious and warm. These birds are flying overhead, and they have eagle eyes, and they can just spot anybody, and they just swoop down, and before the little guy knows what's happening, he's already inside struggling to get out, and it's hopeless. This is our position. If we're not very deep in bhakti, if we're just floating on the surface of this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then it's pretty likely that we're going to be chomped up like that in a similar way. And you can say that this is a Kanishta Adhikar. Prabhupada also always says this. He warns us, do not remain as a Kanishta Adhikari. Why? Because Nalani Dalagata Jalamati Tarala Tatvat Jivita Patashaya Chavala. At any moment, anything can happen. I've seen this. Maybe you've seen it if you're my age. If not, just wait. You'll see it. Things happen. I mean, they have a saying in English, truth is stranger than fiction. You can't make this stuff up. The kinds of things that happen in this world are so outrageous and wild. Even Shakespeare said, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is better to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune. Raise your hand if you've ever been in Sarasati or Saturn Mahadasha. You don't have to raise your hand. Trust me. Everybody has to go through it. So, one is placed in this ocean of rasa only by the grace of what he calls Mahanubhavas. That means something else in Maharashtra, but here it means great souls. So this is a point to bookmark here, according to Sanatana Goswami. Okay. But otherwise, he's saying the same thing as Sri Goswami. Now, Jiva Goswami says, Satamiti Rasayanat Vena Prathamam Ruchis Tattapi Padito Dharanadi Charitra Shravanena Shraddha Vishvasaha Tato Rati Bhakti. Kind of abbreviated comments here, but it means in this verse there's an initial taste. In the beginning you get the taste because it is medicinal. because it is a medicine, as we mentioned already. Parents, you know, when it's time to give the children the medicine, it has to be sweet, otherwise they're not going to take it. And similarly, Srila Prabhupada was constantly encouraging us, this Krishna consciousness is simply recreation. And when he said that, one devotee said, but Prabhupada, there's a lot of work also. And Prabhupada said, no, simply recreation. Simply chanting, dancing, feasting, philosophy. And even our work is play. Otherwise, you're going to have to work for, you know, Infosys. Or, you know, so one of these, Amazon. Maybe some of you are IT people. So that's another definition of IT. What is it? International Tamil. I know this. When I was in Seattle, Washington, in the heyday of the Microsoft Corporation, and I was preaching to all Tamil Iyengars. Iyengars don't join, only Iyengars. So I used to tell them that you people have these system requirements to run this software. When we try to do it, all kinds of things come out. Like, you know, female Diksha gurus and other things, and crazy stuff. So this is the point that is being made here. Mahanubhavayareva. By the mercy of Mahanubhavas, great advanced devotees, then you can be experiencing this process. And what does that process entail? It means having faith. Then he defines what is faith. Faith means vishvasa, trust. We hear this also in Srila Prabhupada's books. We hear this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. Vishvas means trust, Shraddha means faith. They're very closely related. That happens when you hear of the character of that person who elevates even the fallen persons. I ought to know. I'm probably more fallen than anyone is. Not probably, I'm sure I'm more fallen than anyone else is. But I'm sitting here, even after 50 years, because Krishna is merciful. He's so nice. Tamva dayalum sharanam prajema. He's asking this rhetorical question. Who can I find who's more merciful than Krishna? Putana came to kill him. And he gave her liberation also. Did he give her moksha? Or did he give her something more than moksha? Who knows? What happened to Putana? Generally, when Krishna kills someone, they get moksha. Is that what happened to Putana? What happened? She went back to Godhead. Vimoksha means beyond liberation. She got this position of love of God. And why? Because she just happened to think that he's such a cute boy. Let me do something. Maybe I can hold him and just, you know. That's all. And he's so merciful. So why should he not give us all mercy if we're begging him for it? Begging Krishna. You can't always control Krishna. This is a fact. Rupa Goswami reminds us of this in his Padyavali. He says, many times people come to Krishna with their ardent requests, very sincerely, intently pray, and Krishna does not fulfill what they want. Many times it happens like that. But you have to do nothing but come to Vrindavan and simply exist there. And without any question of whether you've done any bhajan or not, Bhakti Devi will come and give you prema. Does it sound like a good deal?
Yes, please.
It sounds like a freebie. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's limited time only. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela. Mahaprabhu Leela. And somehow we've all been inducted into this Leela. That is mercy. Willing or not, deserving or not, whatever the case may be, we're all sitting here tonight. As I said in the beginning, it's a very special event. Because of all the people that live in this Chennai, how many? Maybe 1 billion people here? I don't know. There's only a handful who are taking the time to listen to this verse and to try to understand, how does this apply in my life? What do I do about this? How can I go back to Godhead? How can I also get Krishna's mercy? Does he really love me too? This thing we have to face in the human form of life, because that's what the human form of life is for. So, then one is placed on the transcendental platform. Bhaktehe Purva Paravasthe. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and this is Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, now he's giving a big purport. From association with the best devotees, the topics of my glorious pastimes become directly realized. He's speaking in the place of Bhakti, bringing the devotee to Nishtha. So he's introducing this other stage. Why? Because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has the benefit of having read the Nectar of Devotion. So there he's already read these 8 stages that Rupa Goswami elaborated on. So he's incorporating that into his commentary here. This is how we should talk. When we explain something about Krishna, we have to hear from our acharyas, and we have to relate it. And we have to point out that relationship. That's called corroboration. Shruti Smriti Puranati Pancharatri Tithindina Aikantiki Harer Bhakti Otherwise, your so-called love of Godhead, if you don't actually substantiate it by explicit reference to the Shastra, Shastriyonidvat, then it just very often it's just a disturbance. Nowhere is this more clear, I think, than in Vrindavan, where I live. All kinds of things going on. I mean, you never know who they are. To be fair, there may be great souls there. You just don't know. But there's a lot of very questionable things that go on in the name of bhakti, and we should not add to that problem. We should be very faithful disciples of this disciplic succession, and particularly of Srila Prabhupada, and we should do what he did. We were talking about this the other night. All the way from the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, all the way through the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada is quoting in full the same verses over and over and over and over and over again. Verses such as, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe komadam yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir tiras tatra namuyati. Why? Several reasons. Number one, it's not so easy to realize this. It's very simple intellectually, as we were saying. You can talk theoretically about what happens when a person is electrocuted, or you can take a knife and hold it into a socket. You understand? It's a different experience. I mean to say, it is experience, not just gyan, it's the gyan. So Krishna consciousness actually needs to yaswanu bhavam akhila shruti saramekam. If the one topic of this Srimad Bhagavatam is nothing but the personal experience of Shukdev Goswami. And because we're all also parts and parcels of Krishna, we can also have that same experience, but in our own way. Akhila Rasamrita Murti. Because Krishna he has different relationship with all of us. Same reason acharyas give different opinions and angles on these verses. So we all follow the same process, but for each of us, we have a custom-tailored process at the same time. On the emotional level, it's custom-tailored. On the scientific level, it's the same thing for everyone. So what is that same thing that we can know objectively? That is this Shastra Yonidvat approach. Yashastra Vidham, what does he say? No. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te Parya Pari Vidanata Ityat. You should know what to do and what not to do on the basis of what the Shastra says. Shastra is the center, Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And based on the Shastra, one can judge who is sadhu and who is guru. It's not that because my guru says, therefore I accept this Shastra. No, that's the wrong approach. We have intelligence that is directly informed by the Shastra. Otherwise, how do you ever choose who is the bona fide guru? You can't just fill your pockets with money and head for Chor Bazaar. You're going to be ripped off. You have to know what is the price of gold, who's a reputable dealer. Maybe you take somebody local with you. There's so many things you have to do. It's like that in bhakti, but people don't follow the scientific process. They just think that they can wing it, and Krishna will help. So This is one thing. From association with the best devotees, the topics of my glorious pastimes become directly realized, bringing the devotee to the stage of nishtha. So he's paraphrasing his predecessor. In that way, he establishes his own authority. Similarly, when we speak about Krishna consciousness, if we are citing the references, just as Srila Prabhupada did to set us the example, that's another reason he did it, and to show us what's the important aspects that we need to know, what are the big verses that we must memorize, that's another reason he did it. And because it is always auspicious to vibrate Krishna Katha, that's the fourth reason that he's done like this. We have to do like that. It's very, very important. So then he says, Tadas ta eva katha nishtam utpadayantyo mama viryasya man mahatmasya samvit samyak vedana yatas tatha bhutam bhavanti. That means that the topics become like an elixir for the heart and the ears at the stage of ruchi, from association with the best of the devotees. My Mahatmas. When you associate with my Mahatmas, Kapila Dev says, then this thing happens. Samyak Vedanam. Vedana. I don't know if you have this word in Tamil. In Hindi, Vedana means pain. You have it in that sense here also. But this is different. Vedana means complete perception. In other words, Asam Shayam Samagramam Yathagyasasi Tachmino. That's what we're talking about. If you want to understand Krishna completely, then you have to hear these potent topics from the Mahatmas. Because in a strange sort of a way, in an inconceivable way, the Mahatmas are the ones that make these things so potent for us. It's an inconceivable process, but that's what happens. Then what happens? We've already discussed this. It becomes a medicine to the ear because, hands down, far and above everything else in the Puranas, this Srimad Bhagavatam is what? Poetry. So nice poetry. And that's pleasing to the ear. Therefore, he's called Uttama Shloka. But it's not just pleasing to the ear. What happens when it goes into the ear and hopefully into the heart instead of out the other ear? What happens? Karna Rasayana Katha. Then it becomes medicinal in the heart. And our Hridroga, which is basically kama, that thing is dissolved. Avidya Nivritti, as we've already discussed, when Sridhar Swami told us. By this process of hearing submissively from powerful devotees, the topic becomes so powerful that it's like a powerful medicine, and there's no chance of the infection remaining there. This is so encouraging. All you have to do is hear and follow what you hear also. Tatas tasam kathanam joshanat pritya Asvadanat abavargo varshmani eva yasya tasmin bhagavati shittha asakti ratir bhava bhakti prema anupramena bhavishti. So he's expanding the list here. He says shraddha, asakti, rati, bhava, bhakti, prema. He's still not giving all the ones that Rupa gives, but he's expanding it. So how does he take this word Joshanat? Anybody remember what Sridhar Swami said? What does Joshanat mean? Listening keenly? I said it means, yes, Sevanat. So here he says Joshanat means Pritya. Pritya is love. We find certain shibboleths in Srila Prabhupada's books. You know what a shibboleth is? No. It means some formula that he repeats again and again and again and again and again. One of those formulas that we find throughout Srila Prabhupada's books is the phrase transcendental loving service, right? Everybody, we've heard this. Why does he say that? Most people will just take this word bhakti and translate it the simple way. It means devotion. Why doesn't Prabhupada do that? Why is he different? Why does he have to make it difficult? Transcendental loving service. Number one, preliminary qualification. Transcendental. You have to be transcendental. That means Brahmabhuta Prasannatmana Shochikidikangshitu Ityadi. What happens when you're in that position, Krishna says? Mad Bhaktir Vibhate Param. Then you get Parabhakti. Otherwise you've got, maybe we can call it Aparabhakti. Or Prabhupada calls it Prakrita Bhakti. What does Prakrita Bhakti mean? Natural, casual, easy, basically material bhakti. So if you want the real bhakti, the parabhakti, then you have to be liberated. And that's why Prabhupada uses this adjective, transcendental. What's the next thing that it has to be? Loving. It's not enough to be transcendental because, let the Mayavadis be transcendental for a while until they open a hospital. And, anybody can be transcendental in a sense. But our transcendence is of this nature. Pritya. With love, we're serving with love. That's the experience that we're meant to call from this Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can't have that experience unless you make the attempt. What does Krishna say in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita about this? Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyanti atmani avastitam ityadi. In effect, he's telling us that those who try to understand how everything is happening, if they're not engaged in following this process, they can't understand, even if they're endeavoring hard to understand. That's why Prabhupada is belaboring this point in his purport. You cannot study Srimad Bhagavatam academically and expect that you're going to get an insight. You will not advance, because it has to be given to you by a pure devotee. You have to imbibe that spirit of priti, love, and that love will be manifest in a practical way, and that's why he says service. Remember, Joshanat equals Sevanat? Transcendental, loving service. So don't be a mundane devotee, don't be a Mayavadi impersonalist, and don't be a do-nothing. You have to do something. Just like this Velukuri Krishnan, right? When we went to near Sri Vaikuntham, he has an ashram there. Kitchen Karam Trust. I like that. What does it mean? Kitchen, do something! So, this is the idea. So, Tat Joshanat Ashwapa Vartmani Shraddharatir Bhaktir Anukramishati. This is the process that is given as explained by our acharyas. So, as we said, as Rupa Goswami said, it's not just Shraddharati and Bhakti, it's also, well, who knows the verse? Somebody can quote it for me. Bhakti ke samne sindhu, Adao Shraddha Tata. Okay, keep going. It's kind of fading out here. Okay, Shraddha, we have some faith. And we invest that faith. Where do we invest our faith? Yes, not Asat Sangha. Asat Sangha will take you in the opposite direction. Here on every street corner we have Kalayar. Why? What is its another name? Vinayaka. Why Vinayaka? What does Nayaka mean? Huh? Leader. Neta. Nayati. Yes. So, where is he leading? He's leading in the V. What does V mean? It's a pratyaya. It means two things. One possibility is Vishesh. He's really leading. Or the other possibility, what is it? Who knows? Datta. Yes. He's leading you in the other direction. By removing the obstacles to your material life, what's he doing? He's entangling you deeper in that material life. I mean, we don't want to offend anyone. We have all respect for Ganesh. In fact, we depend on him. Prabhupada even says in Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, worship him. Every temple, the doorway, you all know these things. So, yes, if we're associated with the wrong persons and for the wrong reasons, then they're just going to take us in the wrong direction, because sangat sanjayate apam. Your desires are not just popping out of nowhere. There's a reason you desire what you desire. You have somehow lashed onto something somewhere along the line, and that thing is nagging at your heart. Therefore, the devotees are more merciful than Krishna, because Mahaprabhu is sending his devotees all over the world. God-forsaken places, such as Caracas, Venezuela. In 1975, we mentioned this the other day, Srila Prabhupada came to Caracas, Venezuela, and he saw Gaura standing there. And he saw these South American devotees chanting sincerely. And Prabhupada just went into total ecstasy seeing this. It just, like water from a syringe, came shooting out of his eyes and getting the devotees wet. Can you imagine? Raise your hand if you've ever seen such a thing happen. This is the kind of thing we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but nobody thought they would ever see it until they did. Shrutakirti, my godbrother, was there in 1975. And it happened not only in Caracas, Venezuela, but it happened again in Atlanta, Georgia. Same thing. Prabhupada spoke and said, these Gauritai very mercifully come to your city. They're the most merciful. And he just shut down. He couldn't speak any further. He just broke down crying, and then he just told the devotees chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada himself was witnessing the miracle of his own making, and probably marveling over the fact that somehow or other he was the agent. There's no other possible agent that you can ascribe the success to. It was only him. Everyone was against him. You think your godbrothers are a problem sometimes? We all know that we depend on godbrothers. They're our primary support and their primary opposition also. So Prabhupada had nothing from his godbrothers except for discouragement. He had no money. He had no scope. He had only hippies to work with. And still, he's seeing that this thing is actually happening. It's taking root in every country. Imagine what he was feeling. Such a wonderful thing. So, Srila Prabhupada was in ecstasy like this. I forgot how we got to this point, but the point is that when we serve the Lord, by association. So when we're associated with this kind of personality, then we can possibly get a glimpse what is love. Just by hearing this, we get some idea, isn't it? And when we're associating with people who think that this is all just old-fashioned bhajan nonsense, Hindu mythology, and get real, this is 2022, then obviously we're going to develop those desires. But Sridhar Swami and Sanatana Goswami and Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they're all saying, this thing will only happen if you put yourself into the association of Mahatmas, being superior devotees of the Lord. So, only by association with devotees does the mind develop attraction to the Lord, Sanatana or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. And the stages are described here. The previous verse mentioned that association should be desired. Then faith first arises. Ado shraddha tata sadhu sangha atha bhajana kriya tato anarjana visisya. This is the thing that snags most people, actually. Krishna gives the stats in Bhagavad Gita, right? Well, how many people actually become Krishna conscious out of how many people try? Well, just figure it out. How many people are in this room? Maybe 50 people maximum. And how many people are in the city of Chennai? So look, this is the number of people who are thinking about it. And how many of us are completely put down? They think it's, instead of Shravanam Kirtanam, they think it's about Darshanam Dhanam. And they never make it past them. So they never get to the stage of an Arjuna Vritti even. But even if you do, it's not so easy to persevere for 50 years, because believe you me, I don't know what kind of plan you've all made for your lives, but I can guarantee without one single exception that your life is not going to be what you expect. It is not going to work out how you plan. This I'm speaking from experience. Atma-upamyena sarvat-prastavam pashyat Arjuna ityadi. Again, truth is stranger than fiction, and this material energy can throw all kinds of things in your direction. And they can really bewilder you, and I've seen it happen. There were 5 devotees were initiating with me at the same time that I took initiation. And all of them are gone. All of them. Some of them died. Some of them just left. And out of 5,000 disciples that Prabhupada initiated, how many? Well, you don't see very many of them in Chennai, do you? Somebody told me this. Prabhupada's disciples don't come here very often. That's what I'm told. But anyway, the point is that it's very rare. Because, to get to this stage of Nishtha, that takes a lot of work. It's a little bit like learning Sanskrit. If you learn Sanskrit, what is the first thing you have to learn after the alphabet? Since you're Tamil. What's the first thing you have to learn? Sandhi! You can't even begin to read a sentence until you know how they join together and how they merge with one another, and it can be confusing. And you have to learn all these persnickety little rules about that, and you've got to memorize it. Otherwise, there's no way you can even begin to figure out what is the thing saying. What to speak of understanding what it means. You can't even read what it says. So this is like an artificity. Up front, you have to do the hard work of getting all this ugly stuff out of your heart. And there's no easy way to do that. We have to be honest. That's true. That's true. But, this is the part that Prabhupada didn't tell us about. I mean, although he stressed you have to follow the rules and regulations, he didn't really tell us how hard it could be. And it can be hard. Especially, put it this way. It can be harder or it can be easier depending on the association that you keep. Therefore, sadhu sangha, sarva shastra koi, matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. So many ways it's been said. Association is everything. It is, Prabhupada said at one point, is 90% of our advancement. And again, that works in both ways. You've got the wrong association, you can put yourself in the express lane, going very fast towards hell. And if you put yourself in the right association, you can get yourself in the express lane, going back to Godhead on well-oiled tracks. So, this is the thing. From these stories that the devotees talk about, stories, I mean katha, not just stories, but Krishna katha. From this comes direct realization, samvida, of the Lord's great power and quality, virya. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's state. These produce ruchi, because they're pleasing to the ear and the heart. From that taste, Joshanath, we've got a third definition here, see? First was Sevana, then we had, what was it? Priti. And now we have, Joshanath means taste. From that taste, I look at it in terms of the root. Josh means enthusiasm. Joshi. Josh. So, from that enthusiasm, or however, then asakti. And here he says, asakti means what? This is a trick question. I'm looking for Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's answer specific to this verse.
Know more about it.
He says, asakti means shraddha. That's interesting, isn't it? Asakti in his commentary means shraddha. And then you get bhava, which according to him here means what? Rati, affection or attachment to the Lord. And then you get prema, which he says means bhakti. So when we talk about bhakti, we have to know that it's not so easy thing, this bhakti. That's why Krishna gives those statistics. Manushyanam sahasreshu ityadi. Of course, there are different definitions, just like we find in Prabhupada's books different definition of Vaishnava. One place it says a Vaishnava is anyone in the crowd who's chanting Krishna's name. Fine. It's a bona fide definition. Other places he said Vaishnava means somebody who's completely given up everything and 100% uttama adhikari. So there are different definitions. But now, this is very interesting. Listen to what he says, his concluding words here. In the mouth of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's speaking in the voice of Kapila Dev. What does Kapila Dev say? Samprati maya pravartyamana bhaktirevam anupramihina loke prachara yashyati iti artha. Anybody know Sanskrit? You already peeped by this. This is the thing. He says that in the future is going to be preached throughout this world. Sounds almost like a prediction. The Bhakti explained by me now will be preached throughout the world following this sequence. It's almost like a prediction of the Krishna consciousness movement, because who else is preaching about this sequence of advancement in the science of Bhakti? Nobody. Only the movement that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has empowered to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. That's an undeniable fait accompli. It's already been done. Nobody can argue with it. So it's very interesting. Okay, I don't know what time. Maybe we're running out of time. So tell me what to do, because there's more. There's always more. That's one thing you realize. You've been around for a while. It just keeps expanding. So, and the 10 minutes? Another 10 minutes. I'll try to be brief. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on tonight's verse, references another verse, just as we've already heard. Our predecessor acharyas, they're quoting verses to show that they have some authority. So Jiva Goswami, in his commentary, is referencing which verse? Shushrusho Shadathanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi. Did I turn it off? Radhe. It's so blinking red. Hare Krishna. Way in the back, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'll just try to shout. Americans are good at making their voices heard. Okay. Okay. Shushrusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirunishevana. There he says, you get a taste, because Sridhar Swami has heard in text 15 of chapter 2, first canto. Who will not listen to these messages, which are so powerful that they can destroy karma just by hearing? So Sridhar Swami raises this question. He says, well, somebody may doubt that, what if I don't have a taste for hearing? Does that mean that what do I do? And so this is why he gives this verse. What do you do if you don't have a taste? You serve devotees. Joshanat, Sevanat, Pritya, Ityadi. So this is the key. And then he said, who is a devotee? What kind of devotee shall I serve? Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipraha. Mahat Seva. What does that mean? Mahat Seva. How do you break this up? Paracheda, Padarthopir, Vakya, Vigraha, Vakya Yojana, Akshepeshu, Samadhanam, Panchamam, Yakhya Lakshana. How do you break up the word? Mahat Seva. Service of the Mahatmas. Does everybody raise your hand if you agree with that? Sir, everybody's afraid of me. Yes, it's a completely, perfectly acceptable answer. What about great service? Mahaseva. It's all perfectly acceptable. Either way you want to take it, this is what it takes. You have to serve, again, by serving. And who are you serving? Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. You have to serve the Punya Tirtha. Jiva Goswami quotes several verses. Bhagavatam 10.48.31, Bhagavatam 1.1.15. You can look them up in your own time if you listen to the recording. You can find them out. But everything he's saying is supported elsewhere in the Shastra. Punya Tirtha, you can call a Vaishnava a Tirtha because he's the person who takes you to the other side. And Punya Tirtha Nishevanat means Nishpapasya Mahat Sevasya. You have to serve a Vaishnava who is free of sin. Very important point. If he is in ecstasy, sitting on the Vyasasana, talking about Ras Lila, and then he goes home and has his own Ras Lila, doesn't work. Now it happens. I've had people come to me, Prabhuji, I'm preaching to so many people, but I have trouble following the four regular principles. What to do? This is reality. So, Punya Tirtha Nishevanat means Nishpapasya Mahat Seva. Somebody who is freed from sin. Tathacha tad dharma shraddha tatashravane tato ruchitsya ityartha. This means that in the beginning you get some faith in that person's dharma, and then you get shravane cha, you get a desire to hear from anything about these topics, and then finally you get this taste that we've been discussing. That's how Sridhar Swami takes it. So Jiva Goswami, he takes it a step further. Tatra mahat sango bhavatiti tadiya tikanumatyacha punyatirtha nishevanat hetor labdhaya truchaya. I don't want to say that. He says mahatam prayas tatra brahmatam tishtatam va darshana sparshana sambhashanadi lakshana seva. He says that if you just happen to come across one of these devotees, you don't even know who he is. Let me give you an example, famous example. Srila Prabhupada was in a jet plane. Again, Shrutakirti was with him. And the plane is taking off, and Prabhupada wants to eat. You're not allowed to eat when the plane is taking off, but, nobody stopped him because he's an old man and, he's obviously a saintly person. So the stewardess comes by once the plane is leveled, and Prabhupada is still eating. He had these puffed rice and milk. And so the stewardess comes up, and she just grabs a handful of it and puts it in her mouth. And she said, hey, that looks good. And she's done. I mean, I can't imagine how she could do such a thing. It's beyond all protocols. What was it that inspired her to do this? Could only be Paramatma. She later became a devotee this later. Ordinary Mexican stewardess. They were in Mexico, I think. So here he says, Darshana, Sparshana, Sambhashanadi. You just see the person, you can make advancement. You just touch the person, excuse me, here it's easy in India. Especially on the trains. And Sambhashana. You just momentary talking with someone. This is all that it takes, and you can develop this faith by that interaction. This is why we say, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Because every siddhi comes from what? First, Adau? See, this is a beautiful point that he makes. Mahatam prayas tatra brahmadam tishtadam va darshana sparshana sambhashanadi lakshana seva swatara eva sambhadyate. And you may serve that person without even intending to do so. It comes up of its own service. Oh, let me get that for you. Right? Just common courtesy if you've been raised well. Nowadays, people are increasingly ill-bred. What we notice because I don't want to say too much, but let's put it this way. I've stayed in places where people play loud music up until 1 or 2 a.m. And, they don't care if there's Iyengars living next door or Hare Krishna devotees upstairs. They don't care. That's called ill-bred. But if you're a polite person, civil person, and, you just have some chance encounter with a devotee, like the other day we were walking, this man pulls over and he says, can I drive you? Do you need to go somewhere? That's all it takes if you're a Mahatma. and your devotional service will have started. Your creeper will be planted by that. We call it Ajnata Sukriti. He doesn't even know what he's done. But just by that chance encounter, Jiva Goswami is saying here. And then what happens? Tad prabhavena cha tadiyacharane shraddha bhavati. From the influence of that person's association, his shraddha comes about. Next life he's born and he's no longer ADMK. Now he's become a devotee. So anyway, there are many more things here, but we have to keep in mind the time. Tat shravanena chatasyam ruchir dayate iti. You get the ruchi and all these things that we've already discussed. Now, Jiva Goswami again says the same thing. Tatacha mahadhya eva shruta jhaditi karya kariti bhava. This thing is affected just by this momentary encounter with a mahat, or this hearing from a mahat. And then he quotes tonight's verse, which is seal it up. This is how it happens. Beginning. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, hear how attraction for topics of the Lord arises. It arises by service to great devotees caused by the good fortune of the mercy of those devotees. By that, one develops faith. And by faith, one takes shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, Sadguru, Punya Tirtana Shevana. And thus being eager to hear those topics, Shushusho, he develops taste for them. Okay, we have to stop now. Now, for those who are really eager to hear more, you can see Prabhupada's lecture on this verse from 1974, November 25th, 1974 in Mumbai. He spoke on all these verses, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, and he explains all these things in much more detail. I'm going to stop. Does anyone have any questions or any comments? Yes.
Basically, we all know the Nadu Shraddha means little faith, Tata Sadhu Sangha. Then we get the Sadhu Sangha. And this Sadhu Sangha is not the, Sadhu Sangha means few devotees. But we are getting the association of devotees where we try to do bhajan, then we start chanting and doing other things. So how to understand that and with this Sadhu Sangha?
A very good question. There are different levels of devotees. We said this. Sometimes you can say a devotee is that person who chants Hare Krishna. No matter what else he does the rest of the time, he's chanting Hare Krishna. So he, if Krishna's in a good mood, he's considered to be a devotee. And, sometimes another person may be a struggling Madhyama Adhikari. He's not perfect, but he's sincere. And he's also a devotee. And very rarely a person may be Uttama Adhikari. We've been emphasizing that, just as in the Nectar of Instruction, text number 5, Srila Prabhupada himself emphasizes the importance for those looking for a bona fide spiritual master, find somebody who's an Uttama Adhikari. But that's not to say that a Madhyama Adhikari or even a Kanishta Adhikari is not also a Vaishnava and cannot help us. It is not like that. And it's also not to say that the less advanced devotees are not liberated. They are. Srila Prabhupada says this in his purport to 3rd canto, chapter 25. Well, the next verse, text number 26. He takes great pains to show that even the Kanishta Adhikari is also mukta. He's liberated. What to speak of the Madhyama Adhikari, Uttama Adhikari. Anyone that we hear from can teach us something about Krishna consciousness. But it's not that we can learn everything about Krishna consciousness from just anyone. You see the point? You can only, in other words, you have to reserve a particular set of ears for the Uttama Adhikari. And you don't give those ears to anyone else. Everyone else, you put screens on your ears and filter out the things that are not going to be helpful. We have to do that. That's what it means to be a Madhyama Adhikari, to use your discrimination. Who do I associate with? Who do I not associate? This person can elevate me, this person may degrade me. We have to do this. It's not being judgmental to do that. It's not necessarily being judgmental to them. Somebody may be judgmental, I don't know. But this is the point. It's like this. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam tadani buddhiyogam tam. Or yayatha mam prapadyante tasathaiva bhajami. So many places in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna indicates if your desire is to advance, then Krishna is going to give you the things that you need to advance. And it doesn't matter who he speaks to. My God sister. Anybody here know Prasanatma? My God brother Prasanatma? Anybody know? It's way before your time, maybe. He's from here. He grew up right across the street from the Madhava temple, the Divyadesham, and Iyengar family. So his wife was American, Parvati. She's departed now from this world. But she told me that when she joined ISKCON, the first people to introduce her to Krishna consciousness were two former sannyasis who had left ISKCON. So somehow or other, Krishna used them as conduits for Krishna consciousness that inspired her to give her life, up until the time of death when she died in Vrindavan. So it's kind of like COVID-19. You can be asymptomatic, but still be carrying this thing and spreading it. But of course, it's positive. So you may not even realize that you have as much Krishna consciousness as you do. But if you're just talking about Krishna, and if you're making your best effort to become Krishna conscious, it doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what your problem is. It doesn't matter, because Mahaprabhu is so hungry to bring more people into this movement. Krishna is so eager to bring his lost calves back. Beautiful verse by Bilva Mangala Thakur. He says, "My dear Lord, please lead my goal back into your pasture." What does goal mean? What else does it mean? Yes. Please lead my senses back into your lotus feet. That's what he's saying. He says, because who can imagine that the person who's the king of the cowherds would ever even lose one cow? He's praying like this. A very nice prayer. So gochayet charya kim madiyam upekshase gam apate prajanti. You must have noticed this cow is wandering astray from the path. So please, herd might go back into your herd. Be nice. We can pray like this. Now, anybody who's saying anything about Krishna consciousness, if you are discriminating, if you have read, that means if you have read Srila Prabhupada's books, then you can draw something of great value from that person's words, even if the person is imperfect in so many ways. And if you can't, for some reason, bring yourself to do this, then good luck. Because it's not every day that we have the association with the Adhikaris. There's a very valuable lesson that I learned from Tamal Krishna Goswami, and then I'll end, because people are getting restless. He said, if for any reason you're not satisfied with the association that you have right now, the first and the best thing to do is to somehow learn how to better appreciate that association. One way is to consider that not a blade of grass waves in the breeze without Krishna's sanction, which means that you've been put into this association for some reason. Have you taken full advantage of it? That's one thing. And by the logic of what I've been explaining, you can find, if you dig deep enough into that person's heart, there's going to be something there that is tremendous value and great inspiration, no matter who you are and no matter who that person is. There's gold there. That's the first thing and the best thing. If for some reason, if that doesn't work out, this is 2022. It has never been easier to seek out the association that you want. You can do it at the pushing of buttons. That's all. Or you can go find some kirtan mela or visit some swami or something. It can be done. If you have to be proactive and serious. So that's the second thing you can do. There's one, I tell this story all the time. There's one householder, retired couple, old elderly, in Los Angeles. They have this big flat screen in their house, and it's not filling the environment with the latest Bollywood nonsense. They have programmed this thing to go from one time zone to the other, all the way around the world, just broadcasting 24 hours a day the ISKCON temple programs in every time zone of the world. So their house is filled with Krishna Katha 24 hours a day, and they remain enlightened. So that's the second option. Somehow or other, proactively seek the association that you want or need. Third, this is maybe not the best, but it is the example of Srila Prabhupada. In Srila Prabhupada's case, we mentioned already, every single one of his godbrothers was not prepared to listen to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, every last one of them. They didn't want to do what he asked. Sometimes we see that. And so Prabhupada went out and created the association. That's not something a neophyte can do, but it's an option that we see. So these are the three things that we can consider. I hope that's helpful.
This Adosha also doesn't mean it's completely.
That's right. Yeah, this is the point that I'm making. When I say you have to reserve a particular set of ears only for the spiritual master, that means 100% anything he says I can accept. You can't do that with anybody else, because the other person may not even have your best interest in his heart. I hate to say this, but there are people who come to me and say that, we have our counselor, but our counselor doesn't. Or, have some motive and it's taking advantage. It happens. So you have to, therefore I said, Madhyama Adhikar, that the platform that Prabhupada is encouraging and urging us to come to, the primary characteristic of that Madhyama Adhikar status is discrimination. Who should I hear from? Who should I not hear from? Who do I serve? Who do I not serve? Who do I associate with? Who do I avoid? Maitri Kripa, what is that? Prema, Maitri Kripa Upeksha. We know, or we should know, if you've read 11th canto. You have to love the Lord, befriend the devotees, show mercy to those junior to you, and avoid those who are envious. This is what a Madhyam Adhikari does. And if we're going to be Madhyam Adhikaris, which is what Prabhupada asked us to be, at least in the interim, then that's what we have to do. It's not judgmentalism to do that. It's not offensive also. But keep it to yourself. Whatever your opinion is of somebody else, you can't prove these things. It's faith. Keep it to yourself. And don't criticize. Because nindari shunya hridam ipsita sambalabhya. The primary symptom given by Rupa Goswami of the Uttama Adhikari, he doesn't criticize anyone. And I'm prepared to name one of my godbrothers, Vaisheshika Prabhu. I have never in 50 years heard him criticize anyone. Never. So that's an example to aspire towards. And there are others also. Okay? Anything else?
I have a question. I don't know if... we are on Teams, Prabhuji.
Okay. This is a
Hare
question.
Krishna. Can I ask?
Yeah. Providing you raise one of your arms.
I did. I think you can see my hand. Okay. So we spoke about association, and you've given a very vivid description of why association is so important. And, and we have this, also this couplet that says sadhu sangha, lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. But there's also this element of...
Please, keep the question short.
I'm sorry. Okay. I was wondering about the element of mercy in this sangha. And so mercy is actually... it cannot be strained, right? Yet we beg for mercy every time we are in association. So it's kind of seems contradictory when we beg for mercy, because when it only has to come of its own accord, how do we understand that?
Srila Prabhupada speaks about causeless mercy. There's no hetu. You can beg for it, but that we mentioned in the beginning, it's not necessarily going to come, even if you beg for it. And that's why Srimati Radharani says, Ashli Shiva Paradatam Pinashtamama Darshanat Marnamahatam Karodava. So the nature of mercy is that it is causeless. I hate to be. Is that okay? It's a simple question. I'm giving you a simple answer.
Yeah, so why then should we beg for mercy?
It's like this. When a mother has so many children that are all screaming, the one who's screaming loudest is the one who gets milk. You have to demonstrate. I mean, in some sense, you can say you have to earn mercy. You have to loving, transcendental, loving. You have to do something, and that in most cases that is what inspires Krishna's mercy. When he sees that we're actually trying to do something, otherwise it's like, it'll come and maybe it won't come, and I'm going to sit and wait. Okay, so sit and wait. She's very patient, so Krishna will let her wait. So that's why you cry. This chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day is nothing but this. It's nothing but crying for the Lord. It should be of that attitude. And we're not prepared to do that most of the time, actually, because we prefer to be comfortable. And as long as we're comfortable, then Krishna's happy to let us remain comfortable. Mm-hmm. But if we're really uncomfortable, and if we're really sincere and we're really crying, then Krishna's going to say, I've got to do something about this. And you can inspire that mercy, even though it's causeless. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
All right. Anything else?
That we should agree on the argument, like obviously, giving the skill we need, whose associations take this part. But they have also been told that we should never be like it. But
yes,
still right. So we can take care of it because it's not problem.
That's right.
But discrimination is problem.
That's right.
So please help us.
It's a fine art, and it takes practice, and you will learn by trial and error to some degree. But you can direct your efforts most effectively by really assimilating the instructions that are already given to us about this topic. And I will specifically direct you to the 11th canto, those 3 verses it's actually about half a dozen verses that discuss the 3 adhikars. And then you can look in the Nectar of Instruction, which particularly text 5, in which Prabhupada also talks about this. And you can even take a look in the 3rd canto, where Kapila Dev is talking about different kinds of mixed devotional service. And take notes. Do it really seriously. I mean, you have to hardwire this. Otherwise, it's not, the gyan is not going to be there when you need to draw from it. So it really requires serious reading of Prabhupada's books, and that's why Prabhupada told us to read his books every day. Unfortunately, nobody reads any books nowadays, what to speak of Prabhupada's books. Only Facebook. And, that is the end of a civilization, frankly. A civilization will end when it comes to that, because there's no more any culture. We can hardly consider ourselves human beings if we're not concerned about something higher in life than what Facebook offers. So Prabhupada's books are the repository of all things golden and glorious, all things shreyas in human life. So we have only to take better advantage of those books. This is, I'm speaking from so many years of observation and experience. People do not read Prabhupada's books enough. Prabhupada himself criticized us for not reading his books enough. So that's why certain questions arise, because if we were reading the books, the questions don't need to be asked. And the problems, so many of the problems that we go through, they don't exist if enlightened enough already by Srila Prabhupada. And there's nothing that stops us from doing that, except that we're lazy and misguided and above all always discipled. I hope that's helpful. Okay. All right. So maybe we should stop here. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila